In 2011, 343 Industries announces the original Halo Combat Evolved multiplayer would not be included in Combat Evolved Anniversary. 2012, 343 cuts Infection mode from Halo 4, replacing it with Flood mode, which had less features. 2013, Halo Spartan Assault releases exclusively on Windows phones. 2014, Halo MCC releases and it doesn't work at all. 2015, Halo 5 releases and introduces requisition packs and cuts split screen from Halo. Okay, these are just a couple of examples of some of the controversies and dramas that 343 Industries have been in over the years. And I think it's fair to say that after how great Bungie was managing their community and being involved with their community and growing Halo from the ground up, 343 Industries was thrusted into a very difficult position of having to inherit that community that would be quick to scrutinize any potentially negative decisions, and at the same time 343 would be faced with some very challenging decisions that they would have to make moving forward with the Halo franchise. It definitely hasn't been smooth sailing for the 11-year tenure that 343 Industries has had over the Halo franchise, but what if we took a look back at the beginning of 343 taking over Halo and take just a really quick look at every single controversy and drama that 343 Industries managed to find their way into over the years. Now, to be fair, we're aiming to include most of the biggest controversies from over the years, whether we personally agree with them or not, and we're also not trying to make these reviews of the Halo games released under 343. We just want to talk about the criticisms and controversies that may have come out after or before the game's actually released. Most studios will run into criticism at some point or another, and we're going to leave it up to you guys in the comments to decide if you think that the studio has turned the ship around and generally are handling things better nowadays, or if some of these controversies from the earlier years were worse off than the more modern ones. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at what 343 was stepping into when they took over Halo.
Making a game on the scale of Halo takes hundreds of people with different skills, a singular vision, and time.
When you're going to assemble a couple hundred people to build a game, and they all love that game, and that's the main reason that they're coming there, you get this instant shared passion.
We want this to be our Halo game and the first Halo game that 343 has developed.
Taking the core of what makes Halo feel great, that sort of classic Halo play experience, and then evolving it.
To what degree do we need to rework great work that's already been done?
I think it's always important to honor the core of what is for the universe and what is for the gameplay.
We have aspirations to become the best game studio in the world, and I think that is essentially what we're constantly working towards and aiming towards.
But first, before we get into this list, we do want to look at the context of 343 jumping into Halo. Towards the end of Bungie's tenure as the Halo developers, Bungie had a very good reputation within the Halo community. Over the years, many staff members had been looked up to and were idolized and trusted. Bungie had seemingly some of the strongest relationships between players and developers across the entire gaming industry. Now, this new company was expected to not only step into those shoes, but also continue the same company culture that contributed to so many people engaging in the Halo community. Also, during this time, Microsoft was really peddling Halo to grow beyond where it was. We saw a shift towards the end of Bungie's tenure where Halo was being looked at or planned to be a yearly release game series. Halo 3 would release in 2007, and Halo Wars was planned to release in 2008, though it was delayed to early 2009. Halo 3 ODST was the 2009 release, then the big Halo Reach in 2010, Combat Evolved Anniversary 2011, which would lead to Halo 4 in 2012. However, there was also some other struggles that were present within the Halo games itself. By the time Halo Reach was set to release, some fans did start to notice that with the age of the Xbox 360, for the first time in Halo history, the Halo developers Bungie did have to start trimming some small features in favor of squeezing in new additions that would serve as bigger selling points for the game. Reach was the very first game to actually cut weapons and vehicles from previous games, and especially since 2010 was such a big year and a big talking point was surrounding graphics, in order to continuously improve how visuals looked, Reach was also the first game to have a substantial shift in the art style of Halo. There were also some shifts in gameplay as well, just to make Reach stand out as a different game from previous Halos, but for the most part, the majority of the fan base was alright with these changes. There was so many significant enhancements across across the board that say losing the Brute Chopper and Prowler, but gaining something like the Revenant was still an okay trade-off. So while this worked for Halo Reach, this would be a recurring issue for all Halo games down the road, that whoever would take over for the Halo franchise would have to make some decisions on moving forward. And this is kind of the point where 343 Industries stepped in to take over the Halo franchise. 1 year after Halo Reach released, all of the Halo servers, along with the IP itself, were essentially handed over to 343 Industries, and the new era of Halo would begin. Now, of course, prior to the handover of Halo to 343 Industries did have a few smaller projects that they had worked on in the previous years, such as launching Halo Waypoint and Halo Legends. But right off the bat, 343 Industries started off things by mirroring a lot of the communication methods that Bungie was known for. And a lot of fans were at least optimistic when 343 Industries stepped in that Halo would be in good hands.
The community is huge for us in helping us shape what it is that we do next. The more vocal the community is, the more they tell us what they like, the more we can make sure that we try to give them that experience.
So right away, 2011 marked the start of 343 Industries appearing hands-on with the Halo franchise itself, and we saw the big title update to Halo Reach along with the Defiant map pack. And the title update was actually praised decently enough because there were changes made to Bloom, which did change the way that Halo Reach played compared to older Halo games, and we got a vidoc for the Defiant map pack. And while at the time this DLC reveal was received as pretty good from Halo fans, it wouldn't be until later on Halo fans retroactively would look back at some of the wording and the way that things were presented by 343 Industries that this map pack would receive some criticism for the way that it was presented in this specific video.
This is really something being created by 343 and CA, and just being created by a bunch of diehard Halo fans.
And this leads us to one of the biggest controversy that 343 consistently runs into over the course of their entire history: the misdirection of Halo fans. Fans were very eager to see what 343 Industries would be moving forward and how they would compare to Bungie. And this trailer, while not explicitly lying, does mix and match a lot of different things that can cause very easy confusion, which may have been an attempt to try to better 343's reputation at the time. Essentially, in this vidoc, we see 343 talking about how it's their turn with Halo and that they have a lot to prove. And they also talk about how they partnered up with Certain Affinity to work on this DLC. And then this vidoc goes into a lot of detail about Certain Affinity and what they work on over there. And some criticism has been made that this original vidoc misled some fans into thinking that Certain Affinity was a part of 343 Industries, or that the offices at Certain Affinity were representative of 343 Industries moving forward, or there was some permanent partnership in place, when in reality this was a DLC that was 99% made by a third-party company known as Certain Affinity, and 343 Industries just oversaw the implementation and planning stages of this DLC. It's not outright criminal, there's nothing straight up being lied about here, but it was the way that the presentation was used, and years later looking back at it, it does seem a little bit off when you actually realize the major differences between what these companies are and what the Defiant map pack was.
We have resources, we have people, and we're going to throw those people and those resources and that talent and that effort to the Halo franchise, and it's a huge responsibility. People should understand that we understand that and we respect that, and we're going to do everything that we can.
This would also be another issue that continues to come up over the course of 343 Industries, especially when some pre-release stuff on Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary and Halo 4 would come out. There was a major misconception that when Bungie left Halo and split off to start working on their own IP, that half or some large number of Bungie employees left Bungie to continue to work on Halo through 343 Industries. And to this day, this still is one of the biggest misconceptions across all of Halo. We're talking about video game studios that typically have anywhere from 150 to 500 employees, and to suggest that half of Bungie, or even a large number of Bungie employees, left to start up or help form 343 Industries, it's just not at all correct. So let's actually look at the sources and just see how many people from Bungie came over. First, we have Frank O'Connor, someone who is very recognizable from the Bungie days because, well, he was the community community manager, making blog posts and was very active in the community. Now, he wasn't really a game developer, but hey, it is one Bungie guy who was leading the new team moving forward. Then we had Chad Armstrong, who was the playlist manager for Halo 3, and he worked on the Forge team for Halo Reach. There was Vic DeLeon, who was a senior artist at Bungie since the Halo 2 days, and then we run into Donnie Taylor, Will Christensen, and Dan Callan. Now, these three people have worked on Bungie games in the past, the first two being ex-Bungie contract employees, and the third one being a Microsoft and Bungie tester, meaning at some point he worked as a game tester for those games. So ultimately, we're looking at 3 former full-time Bungie employees and a total of 6 people who have maybe had some experience with Halo. And there were over 200 employees at 343 Industries during the development of Halo 4. So you can see how letting fans continue to believe that 343 was made up a big portion of former Bungie employees without clarifying is at the very least a little bit disingenuous, and they very carefully worded things in their videos and their press statements in a way that wouldn't contradict this misconception. Okay, we looked at a mountain. We can look at some of the molehills just to include everything that's pretty much happened over the years. We would see the Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary big reveal, which was pretty exciting that they were going to do an artistic remaster of Combat Evolved in a year in between Halo Reach and Halo 4 releasing. They did this big reveal that this is then and this is now, and it shows Master Chief's helmet looking really scuffed. There definitely was some people commenting that they thought that the helmet looked really weird. Fortunately, they would fix this before release of the game, but I remember just kind of raising an eyebrow during this trailer announcement. A big criticism that at the time wasn't really something I was too concerned about, but I do remember seeing back in 2011, was the criticism that Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary's textures were heavily reliant on reusing Halo Reach's assets. It was really present in some of the gameplay trailers that weapons were just straight up pulled from Halo Reach, and that a lot of the game would be just reusing those assets. Fortunately, a lot of the weapons would be revised to look closer to the original game counterparts, but there still was that criticism that the game relied more heavily on Halo Reach's art direction and assets, more so than trying to build a faithful remake of the art direction of the original Combat Evolved. There's a lot of art direction changes that were pretty significant when you compare Combat Evolved to Combat Evolved Anniversary, and to this day, this is still something that a lot of veteran players talk about when looking at the Combat Evolved Anniversary graphics, but this would really become more of a criticism of the game itself, not so much a massive controversy. But it's also worth noting this, along with little other things like the textures of some of the remastered polygons not lining up correctly, and the fact that this was a ported version of the Gearbox version of the game, which was the PC port, which essentially made this even more less faithful to the original Xbox game. Also, they made it a big point to showcase that there was Kinect integration in the game.
We've got a number of voice commands throughout the course of the game, things like grenade, reload. At a point during the game when you're playing, you can say analyze, and this mode comes up where you can almost capture items. So you move your cursor over, say, an elite or a grunt, and in the library, you can go in there and see the things you've captured, move the model around in 3D, and it gives you a bit of a breakdown and explanation of what those characters are.
Oh boy. Essentially, you could yell grenade, and if you had a Kinect, your Spartan would throw a grenade, or you could yell scan, and it could scan things. It was pretty useless. People had been worried for a long time that Microsoft would really cannibalize Halo by trying to integrate some of these new features like the Kinect, and without Bungie kind of being there to step in front of them and be like, how about we don't do this? Anything would be fair game. And this was just more of a red flag than a full-blown controversy, but it is worth pointing out. Then there was this multiplayer DLC, which did get quite a bit of criticism. Essentially, people were upset that Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary on the Xbox 360, mind you, 2011, did not have Halo Combat Evolved's multiplayer. Instead, they were going to remaster several maps from the past and implement them into Halo Reach with game types that played similarly to how Combat Evolved played back in the day, but with the updated physics engine and multiplayer of Halo Reach. This was already questionable, though just a few years earlier, we kind of saw something similar with Halo 3 ODST, where it was a campaign on one disc with the older multiplayer with every single map on the other disc. And when the game came out, a lot of fans thought that since the progression system was going going to carry over into Combat Evolved Anniversary's multiplayer disc, so would some of the maps. People were under the impression that the multiplayer disc would include all of Halo Reach's maps, just like how the ODST multiplayer disc had all of Halo 3 maps. However, that was not the case. Instead, Combat Evolved Anniversary's multiplayer disc only had the anniversary maps and no way to play Forge World, for example, meaning that if you only had Combat Evolved Anniversary, like you traded in Reach at GameStop to get Combat Evolved Anniversary, which was a thing a lot of us did back in the day because we were high schoolers without money, you were out of luck because they treated this game differently than they did the game 2 years earlier. But a little bonus controversy that happened, Bungie's stat tracking ended up being migrated to Halo Waypoint, so all stats would be tracked through Halo Waypoint instead of Bungie.net. However, in the process of this, they ended up undoing the tracking for VidMaster achievements and the whole process that went into the original Bungie era VidMaster challenges, where you had to go collect 7 achievements to unlock the Recon helmet in Halo 3. The Recon armor was one of the most sought after armor sets in Halo 3, and it was an incredible showing of your achievements and dedication as a Halo fan. So with this migration, no longer would the VidMaster challenges be able to be tracked in the same way, meaning that the Recon armor would no longer be unlockable. So 343 decided to just give everybody the Recon helmet and armor set. It kind of undermined the whole specialness of being one of the few people who had gone through the struggles of unlocking all of those achievements originally. But you know what? Maybe it was just a bumpy start. Let's go ahead and shift gears to Halo 4 now. So Halo 4 would release, and like we said, we're not going to focus on our own opinions here as best as we can. We just want to focus on the objectivity of the controversies themselves. But love it or hate it, 2012 saw the release of Halo 4, and at the very least, Halo 4 was ambitious. Some people really liked the campaign, others didn't. Some people enjoyed the multiplayer, others hated it. Some liked the shift in art style, likely the result of the same issues of visuals that Halo Reach would be faced with, you know, trying to keep those visuals competitive against other games, and then others really didn't like the art shift. These criticisms, whether you liked them or not, were all fair game arguments, but there were some limitations that were justifiably controversial with Halo 4's release. For instance, Forge mode. It really wasn't all that good. The presentation for Halo 4 Forge was absolute hype. They did it at this panel, and everyone was really excited about some of the features. Now, Forge and the overall sandbox of the game ran into some of the similar issues that we saw starting to become a thing during Halo Reach, but instead of innovating a lot of new features to replace things that might have to get scaled back, a lot of things ended up getting cut, digging itself deeper into the problem. For the first time ever, more vehicles were removed from the game without any major replacements other than the Mantis. Some weapons were removed for the first time ever, like the plasma rifle. Infection mode, the classic game mode that people loved from Halo 2, 3, and Reach, was changed into this new mode called Flood mode that didn't allow the infected players to carry weapons, eliminating more than half of the popular custom games a lot of players used to play. There were some technical improvements to things in Halo 4's Forge, but having to bake the lighting every time you switched between Forge mode and Spartan mode was a hassle, and the Forge community noticed these differences right away, and there was parody videos made about how a lot of these limitations that were introduced in Halo 4 Forge were setbacks from the design philosophies that Bungie had with Halo Reach's Forge mode, which was trying to push the boundaries of what was possible.
We always had this vision right from the get-go, which was no one can make anything.
Stealing the tools from the fans that they can't take and run with it and make it their own.
This started to underline the fact that 343 Industries approached this game and started to phase out more and more things that were liked from previous Halo games. Also, this is something we're going to see a lot, but whenever a Halo game releases, fans, no matter what, will retroactively return to some of the promotional material that was used to get people excited about the game and cross-compare it to what we actually got with the game. There's one part where they are talking about how this game really feels like the sequel to Halo 3.
And look at the changes that we're making, and it really feels like we're making a sequel to Halo 3, and that's exactly what we're setting out to do. We're listening to the fan feedback, we're incrementally evolving different aspects of the game design, but there's nothing really revolutionary. And I think that's important, because I think really good design is evolutionary, not revolutionary.
And there's other parts that some players felt like kind of gaslighted the community.
And I think at some points we got in our heads with this game that we're just going to make another Halo. I don't think that's what people want. They may think they want that, but what they really want is something that speaks to the things that they love, but then provides them with something new.
But you know what? Halo 4 was just the first game of 343 Industries. Surely this wouldn't be something that they would repeat again, right? After the release of Halo 4, 343 would open up about some of the shortcomings with the game itself.
And Halo 4 was super valuable learning experience for us just culturally as a studio. But also in terms of the kind of game that we wanted to ship with Halo 5.
While a lot of the community had varying opinions on Halo 4, most of the fans realized that the game did have a lot of ambitious ideas and were willing to give 343 Industries at the very least the benefit of the doubt as they started iterating that they learned a lot as a rookie studio and would grow from their mistakes moving forward. We also got our very first tease as to what Halo 5 would be, where we saw Master Chief in a poncho and he was looking at this giant thing. Also, the brand new Halo spin-off game, the only real game that would release in 2013, would be Halo Spartan Strike.
Everything you've come to expect from Halo. Everything you've come to expect from Halo.
Which released exclusively to Windows phones because they were trying to push Windows phones as a thing for a while. So they decided to, at least for a while, exclusively release this Halo game only on that platform. That wasn't that cool.
Really high production values, great audio, ridiculous amount of fun, and a really compelling storyline.
2014 would mark a very big year for Xbox as they really were trying to regain ground because the Xbox One had launched and they had a ton of controversy about questionable decisions with how they were going to have always on DRM and this whole TV integration they were trying to push with Xbox, and it seemed like for a while Microsoft lost sight of the gaming side of things. So in an attempt to really try to prove that they were invested in their gaming community, 343 announced that the Master Chief Collection would be coming.
For the first time ever, you can play the entire Master Chief saga on a single console, the Xbox One, with Halo, the Master Chief Collection.
And for the first time ever, players would be able to play Halo 1, 2, 3, and 4 in one single place, all in 1080p, 60 frames per second. Halo 2 would be getting the whole anniversary treatment. There was this new multiplayer mode from Halo 2 in the form of Halo 2 Anniversary. It was a very, very big and ambitious deal. And even some reporters at the time didn't understand how on earth a studio like 343 would be able to pull something off like this.
I guess like when you put down the list of everything you wanted in there, then it's just an engineering challenge to make it all work. 100 multiplayer maps, being able to remix all the greatest moments of Master Chief to your own sort of little thing. It's ambitious work.
Yeah, so I think it's a huge, ambitious challenge, and we weren't sure we could do it. So for us, the most important thing was for the fans. You know, we heard loud and clear.
So when MCC released, a lot happened. The game, first of all, didn't function correctly. This was a huge, huge blowback for fans. If you're counting controversies, this is apparently number 18. But yeah, matchmaking didn't work, and it wouldn't work for a very long time. Also, a lot of the very classic Halo 2 tricks were not included because the Halo 2 campaign and multiplayer was just a port of the Halo 2 Vista version, which ran at a higher tick rate, meaning that a lot of the original tricks and functionality would not end up working, though they would end up later on making a patch to re-implement some of the glitches, essentially a modded way to do sword flying. It's a really weird decision that they ended up making. Also, when MCC released, they did a limited review release, excluding the multiplayer side of things, so game studios that would leave the review for the game would publish a high score for the game prior to its release without actually having access to the multiplayer and getting to see how poor the multiplayer was received. At the launch, the game was straight up unplayable, though that didn't stop some game companies from still praising the game. A lot of this criticism would be pointed at Frank O'Connor, who shortly after the release of the game made a few posts in various Halo communities like the Halo subreddit saying that they were working non-stop to bring the game up to the expectation that fans had, and he would make another post later on once they got things fixed up and explain what broke and what ended up happening to cause MCC MCC's launch to be so terrible. Here's the thing, that update that Frank O'Connor promised never actually happened. The game never was brought up to the standard that fans had expected and what was promised, and to this day there's still major issues MCC faces that are still a result of the untanglement of what originally happened during the development of Halo MCC. Things are significantly better now, but that promised update didn't come in the next year. Actually, matter of fact, it wouldn't be addressed again until 1,072 days later, around 3 years later, when 343 announced that they would be putting in extra resources to bring MCC up to standard. Likely because Microsoft and 343 were eyeing the probability of bringing MCC eventually to PC also, but they'd have to fix the game finally and get that working first too. It had almost evolved into this ongoing meme with fans counting how many days it had been since Frank O'Connor said that he would be back with the update, letting everybody know what broke in MCC to cause all of this. But at the end of the day, it wasn't just one thing that broke, causing all of the failures in MCC. It became more and more evident that MCC was just poorly designed and definitely did not have enough attention or time allocated to get the game released in a somewhat acceptable state. There would be fixes just patching the game together over the next couple of weeks and months, eliminating some of the biggest, most prominent problems like matchmaking not at all working, or the ability to kick people out of your ranked games. As an apology, Microsoft announced that they would be releasing Halo 3 ODST to anybody who played during the period of time right after MCC launched for free, which would end up being sold as a $5 DLC to everyone else. And that wasn't even close to the end of some of the controversies 343 found themselves in and the hot water they placed themselves in during this time period. There was a lot of other things going on. First of all, the Halo channel would launch around this time as well, and it was very clunky. Nobody really wanted to have to use it. It would pull you out of your game every time you loaded into a terminal, something that they had to go in and replace when they were porting things over to the PC. And also originally in Combat Evolved Anniversary, the terminals were just baked in anyways, so they had to have retroactively switched that just for Halo channel and then go back and switch it again. I don't think a lot of people liked Halo channel all that much. Some people might have liked some of the content available on the platform, but I don't think anyone was very fond of the user interface and the whole purpose of this app. Also, because of the state of MCC, there were canceled competitive events because the game was just not in a playable state. Also, this next one falls into that misleading pillar that is ever so present in 343's past, but Halo 2 Anniversary's multiplayer was really confusing to a lot of Halo players in the announcement stages of the game. It seemed like there was going to be a remaster to Halo 2's multiplayer, much like the campaign. They showed off a lot of the maps redone in beautiful visuals with classic weapons, but there was also some modern tweaks added in there as well. Now, once again, it's very tricky to pinpoint exact moments where 343 straight up said that it was Halo 2 at its core there, but upon further inspection, essentially this feature added into MCC was not at all Halo 2. It actually was a modified version of Halo 4 that was essentially reworked to play similarly to how Halo 2 played. It was made by certain affinity, and there wasn't really anything outright wrong with Halo 2 Anniversary. That's not where the criticism comes from. The criticism is the fact that it just seemed like 343 was constantly avoiding talking about what this multiplayer experience really was.
We've retouched every part of the game, and of course you can switch from new to classic at the touch of a button.
Even though they could have just elaborated saying that it was an evolved version of Halo 4's engine inspired by Halo 2. I think people would have been okay with that, but maybe because of the backlash of Halo 4, they decided to go this mysterious route where they avoided talking about all of that, and they just mostly alluded to the fact that the Halo 2 Anniversary experience was Halo 2? I don't know. It's just weird, and it didn't feel right. It didn't sit right with a lot of people in the Halo community. But once again, these were more some of the criticisms after MCC released and weren't talked about so much during the actual hype phase before MCC's release. Another big controversy from around this time that players noticed was the Halo 2 Anniversary soundtrack being different from the original Halo 2 version, which was highly acclaimed back in the day. Not only did some fans point out the fact that iconic pieces like Blow Me Away from Gravemind were not in the anniversary version, likely due to licensing issues, the soundtrack for Halo 2 itself was a reorchestration of the original Halo 2 soundtrack by Martin O'Donnell, and there are some discrepancies between the way that the music is played in the Halo 2 anniversary version and what was originally written in the composition back in the day.
By the way, is one of the things I don't like about the anniversary edition is they didn't record it the way I wrote it. They split the strings up. With the low strings just went da 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 da, and the upper strings went da da
yeah
da 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 da. It's like, no, it's not da 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 da. It's da 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 da. That's what they should be playing, all of that. And that aggressiveness and confusion is built into the music, and that's what I wanted, and that's what I got at the original recording. And then they, they walked away from it because they didn't know what I had done because they weren't allowed to talk to me, which is ridiculous.
Now, it is worth pointing out that Halo 2 Anniversary and the entire release of MCC came at a really weird time where just prior to Destiny 1 releasing, Bungie was seeing the departure of a lot of key Bungie employees who worked throughout the Halo years, and in Martin O'Donnell's case, it would spill out into a lawsuit, which Marty would end up winning against Bungie. But apparently during this time, the music arrangers for Halo 2 Anniversary were not allowed to talk to Marty O'Donnell about the project and about the recomposition of the music, meaning that even if they had questions about how something is supposed to be written, arranged, or just in general how it was supposed to sound, they were barred from asking directly, even though Marty has stated in interviews that he would have been willing to participate and help out. Also, it's worth noting when they finally did add Halo 3 ODST into the Master Chief Collection, all references to Marty were completely removed from the game. This iconic Marty Easter egg was changed to Frank O'Connor. Also, another small criticism that people have pointed out from over the years, but MCC doesn't have the original credits from the Halo games intact in an easily accessible way. They have like a link to a forum post or something. And during this time, it definitely felt like 343 was still actively trying to distance itself from any acknowledgement of Bungie or the Bungie employees themselves, just with the way that they were starting to handle these things.
If you would say in hindsight, it would probably have been better just to kind of ship the 4 games separately. And I think that fans would have loved that. We wanted to do more. We wanted it to be this gift to the fans, but obviously some huge learnings there that it didn't turn out that way.
2015 was also a very interesting year. In March of that year, 343 Industries announced something that fans had really wanted for a long time: Halo 3's multiplayer available on PC. Not only that, but the game would be built on the upgraded Halo 3 ODST engine. There would be new maps, new armor, some story events to tie things together, and best of all, the game would be free to play. Oh, and it would only be available for players in Russia. They did some closed alpha testing shortly after that announcement, and in December of 2015, they did a closed beta test, but by August of 2016, they decided just to cancel the project altogether. Sweet. At this time, Halo fans who only ever played on PC, playing the original Combat Evolved PC version and the Halo 2 Vista version, still had only ever been able to play those 2 games and hadn't had a new Halo experience in years. Barreling towards the launch of Halo 5 in 2015, Halo 5 PC Forge would be announced, which would finally bring the newest Halo game to the PC, except it would just be Forge mode, and you'd only be able to build maps and play on custom games on those maps, but only with other PC players, and there would be no crossplay. Also, during the pre-release time of Halo 5's marketing and development, it was announced that local play was planned for Halo 5, though the tweet announcing that would later be cut, and split screen would be completely removed from Halo 5 Guardians prior to the game's release. Falling into the false advertising pillar that we've talked about a little bit, there was also some more commercials promoting Halo 5 Guardians Hunt the Truth, where we would see a final showdown between Locke and Chief, which does not at all play even remotely close to any of the storylines in the actual game. And a lot of the marketing going into Halo 5 Guardians, fans were concerned that Master Chief would be put aside to a side character, even though 343 iterated that Master Chief was still a main character, not the These concerns would be continued through the E3 presentation that year, where they showed off Locke as a main mascot for Microsoft alongside Master Chief, and a series of extra live-action trailers that would set the stage for Halo 5 Guardians would release, insinuating that Master Chief was dead and a traitor and all these other things that once again didn't really become a part of the plot whatsoever for Halo 5 Guardians, like at all.
Is the Master Chief a traitor? Is he gonna die? Who's this dude that just shot him? What are you talking about? He didn't shoot him. The Master Chief was gonna shoot him. Like, what are you guys doing to Halo? That's the point. That's the point.
Later on, after Halo 5 Guardians would release, these trailers and commercials would actually be removed from official Microsoft channels down the road. We could also make the argument in this case when it came to controversies surrounding Halo moving forward from this point. A lot of the times, it seemed like for a lot of players, every time there was a positive announcement or something for fans to be excited about, it always would follow suit with one takeaway or one step back. From a fan perspective, it seemed like every cool announcement was followed by one side effect that would come with everything. Starting with Halo 5, the announcement that future map expansions would be coming to Halo 5 Guardians was well received. However, the inclusion of rec packs to unlock armor customizations and weapons for the Warzone game mode were definitely questionable, with a lot of fans pointing out how this would be a more predatory business model, allowing for things like pay to win and the loss of the beloved unlockable progression system that Halo had had in the past. In an official Halo animation explaining how rec packs worked, concerned Halo fans were disregarded and were told to let the grown-ups talk.
Wait, won't rec packs with special weapons break the exquisitely refined balance of arena multiplayer? Secure your noise hole, soldier! Grown-ups are talking. Damn it.
Now at this time, the consensus for the direction that 343 had been going with Halo was very split and all over the place, but generally speaking, the main belief was Halo 4's story was okay or passable, while Halo 4's multiplayer was really not that good. And then by Halo 5, the story really was the thing struggling, while the multiplayer and gameplay mechanics were really well polished. Not that many people were fans of how Halo 5 Guardians Theater mode worked. Tie that together with the fact that Forge mode was delayed 1 month after its release, and there was no standard big team battle upon launch for Halo 5 Guardians. There was also criticism for one of the Halo Championship Series events with the way that it was organized, where pictures would go viral online, making the event really look like it was a complete bust with some deflated balloons near it. Now, this image itself would later be revealed as a little bit inaccurate, as there was also other pictures posted alongside that, making it look like there was just a few bleachers set up and only a couple of people there, when really that was just the spillover area where there was not enough seating in the main area, which did look a little bit more organized. But the reputation with that image circulating around, tied with the fact that Halo 5 Guardians was not in a good place multiplayer-wise and connectivity-wise during that time, really didn't help 343's case. Along with that, a lot of the talent who were playing at these events criticized the organization and planning of the event as the way that things like catering and other things for the talent themselves were handled were just very unprofessional and not up to the par that other competitive esport games handle big events like this. During the years of 2016 and 2017, while 343 was busy working on the next entry in Halo, which would eventually become Halo Infinite in 2021, Microsoft and 343 entered a partnership with another studio known as Creative Assembly to work on Halo Wars 2. Also during this time, it is assumed that Microsoft was starting to pivot for a bigger multi-platform presence, with more games being released onto Windows, and it appeared like with the future of Halo being more active, Microsoft took interest in getting the Master Chief Collection fixed up and finally maybe in an acceptable state so that they could eventually roll the game out onto PC. Here we go with another really big misconception here. Microsoft partnered up with another studio known as Splash Damage Games to work on the future development of the Master Chief Collection alongside 343 Industries, and Splash Damage Games would also work on the porting porting process for MCC onto the PC. During this time, a very active fan base had been working on reverse engineering that canceled Halo Online project into essentially a free-to-play fan mod that would allow players to connect using the PC build of Halo Online and play games like custom games together. And when it finally reached a fully built state, it ended up being a massive hit for 3 days, announcing that they would have to intercede and end development due to the legal stuff that goes on at Microsoft. Apparently they flew some of the main modders out to 343 Industries and kind of hinted to the fact that they showed them that Halo was meant for PC players too, and that they would think about how to bring Halo to the PC after that. It really seemed like more of a PR type stunt to some fans. I'm totally not springing my opinion into this one. I genuinely think they were already planning on bringing MCC to PC at that point. And also during this time, 343 announced that they would be shutting down the servers for Halo 2 Vista. They also sent a cease and desist to the Project Cartographer team, a Halo 2 Vista mod that fixed up a lot of the big issues in Halo 2 and added extra features like an FOV slider. Fortunately enough, Project Cartographer would be able to rework their mod into the form of a standalone patch that you could apply to an existing license of the game. They weren't actually distributing the game anymore, so Project Cartographer could live on, but it just seemed like a lot of blows to the PC community back to back to back. There's also a serious issue with hit detection that had been present in MCC for a really long time, which was a really big deal with sniper rifles and getting bloodshots, essentially meaning it would register that the player was hit, as you could see the blood coming out of the player. However, there wouldn't be any damage registration, making the sniper hit effectively useless. Also, Xbox had been working on bringing Xbox 360 titles in a backwards compatible state to the Xbox One, and when Halo Reach was included, it ran absolutely terribly. There were some of the worst stutters and frame rate issues on any backwards compatible game title. A lot of the time the matchmaking features were completely down, and it would be months before these would be addressed. One of our earliest videos we talked about here on Rocket Sloth was when we tried to play Halo Reach again on the Xbox One. Once again, if I could get the multiplayer to work, it was pretty fun. It was nice to relive some of the chaos, and it was good, but for a first-party game that Microsoft advertises as backwards compatible, it's a real shame to see a game get such a poor treatment by the team in charge of the servers. I'm really disappointed here. Even after MCC started to roll out on PC, things weren't fully going smoothly just yet with MCC. Halo 2 had a ton of serious issues that were game-breaking upon the release on PC, and some of these issues would even bleed over to the Xbox version, where there were new issues that weren't there originally. In the video 343 Industries vs. the World by Macro Style, an amazing video if you haven't seen it yet, the video covers a small section of where a YouTuber content creator, Bring Halo Back, talks about these bloodshots in a video, and then later on a 343 employee during a live stream essentially mocks BHB for bringing this to their attention, and essentially talks about how other employees had brought up the hit detection question and how he just brushed it off and said that Halo 3 players are bad. Definitely was not a good look.
The point I was trying to make in this video about the bloodshots was that you'll have players standing out in the open like this guy on the pit, and I'm getting a bloodshot on him.
17,000 views.
I know. I had people coming to me like, yeah, can you watch this video? And this guy's shot registration shit. I was like, yeah, sure, let me see it. And I just started laughing literally, like, out loud.
So let me get this right. Somebody at work showed you my video and told you that you should look into the Halo 3 hit detection on MCC, and you just laughed it off. You just laughed it off, as if it's not a real fucking issue.
So even after Halo 5's launch and years into MCC, there was many smaller issues and things weren't smooth sailing. But now, we go into Halo Infinite. There's a lot to cover and we're gonna go fast, so hang tight.
Halo Infinite has been built from the ground up to take full advantage of Xbox Series X.
We do listen, we do learn.
How do we respect the legacy of what came before us, but still build something that feels new?
We're kicking off a journey, an experience that's going to evolve month to month, season to season, year after year.
One of the biggest red flags that came up during Halo Infinite's development was the fact that there was some very high-ranking people at 343 Industries turning over. In mid-2019, just a little under a year from Halo Infinite's targeted launch date, creative director Tim Longo left 343 Industries. Microsoft confirmed Longo's departure in a statement, saying that roles and responsibilities of various team members regularly evolve to meet the needs of a game throughout development, going on to say our executive producer Mary Olson will now take charge of the campaign team on Halo Infinite as the lead producer. 2 months later, Mary Olson left 343 Industries. This probably wasn't the best look, considering it seemed like 343 literally just went through losing a creative lead, put someone in charge, and when they realized the mess they were walking into, immediately left for another job. 343 did make a statement saying that Mary Olson was moved to lead producer on campaign and was not the creative director, and that things were moving on like normal. However, that did bring up some concern to other fans, meaning that when they lost a creative director, the replacement was nobody. It is worth noting that this response says that there was no writing on the wall about Halo Infinite with Mary Olson's departure, though it did seem very odd that Microsoft would make this huge statement name-dropping Mary Olson as the person moving forward in charge of Halo Infinite's campaign just a couple of months earlier, especially since Mary Olson's background in game development is mostly centered around sound design at this point in time. Either Microsoft fully expected Mary Olson to take over the reins of this campaign, and Mary Olson realized that this was an impossible task and left, or Microsoft completely miscommunicated what their plans were with Halo Infinite at this point. Actually, when Tim Longo ended up leaving 343 Industries, Microsoft also said that they are thankful to his many contributions to our games, our studio, and the Halo universe. We wish Tom nothing but the best in his future endeavors. The overall creative vision and production of the game remains led by Chris Lee, studio head of Halo Infinite. This will also be relevant later on, as essentially to calm the nerves of Tim Longo leaving shortly before Halo Infinite's marketing was supposed to go really heavily into full gear, Microsoft heavily pushed Mary Olson and Chris Lee's names out there. Mary Olson leaving leaves just Chris Lee left in this leadership position here. It wouldn't be until August 2020, approximately 3 months before Halo Infinite was supposed to release, where the very first gameplay was finally shown off of the game, and this demo was just panned across the board. This was supposed to be the big showcase of what next-gen console power could be, and graphically speaking, the game itself was just a bit underwhelming for what the expectation had been, especially considering the original tech demo for Halo Infinite that they showed off a couple of years earlier, which looked absolutely beautiful. These two things were not the same. After all of the backlash here, Chris Lee ends up going dark as far as talking about his role in 343, and eventually it is revealed that he is no longer working with 343 Industries and is going to move on to different roles within Microsoft, making essentially what appears to be a third director leaving the role of Halo Infinite director, and it is announced that Joseph Staten is brought on board, along with the 1-year delay that Halo Infinite would face. Okay, now we can look at some of the other micro criticisms and dramas that happened leading up to Infinite's release. In one of the earlier vidocs talking about Halo Infinite, they stated that there would be thousands of options for customizations and armor that you would be able to unlock in-game.
The body of customization content that we have on day one ensures that there will be millions of customization combinations for Spartans on the battlefield.
A lot of our stuff is unlocked through playing the game and only through playing the game.
Upon the release of Halo Infinite, the customization and armor set that were available was criticized for not having a large number of potential possibilities, with pretty much any customization being locked behind the grindy battle pass and not living up to the expectations that were promised in this original vidoc. There was also other controversy prior to Halo Infinite's release when they announced that armor coatings would be replacing the simple pick whatever colors you want your Spartan to look like feature that had been in every Halo game, whereas in every Halo game up until Halo Infinite, you're able just to pick your primary and secondary colors and sometimes some extra little colors here and there, and it was revealed that that wouldn't be the case, but it would allow for more interesting designs to be made specifically for the customization in Halo Infinite. With the Halo Infinite delay, there was also a lot of the brand tie-ins that were already locked in place that still occurred, showing that you could get special armor coatings specifically for buying special products like cookies or energy drinks. It did seem like the monetization side of Halo Infinite was obviously this very large beast, and fans were skeptical to say the least on how monetization would be when Halo Infinite would actually release. As we got closer to the release of Halo Infinite, the new release date that is, there was a big update revealing that Forge mode would be pushed back, and also co-op mode would be pushed back from the launch of the game.
We made the really tough decision to delay shipping campaign co-op for launch, and we also made the tough call to delay shipping Forge past launch as well.
This was a major blow to many fans, and it was said in this reveal that co-op mode would be pushed until Season 2, and also Forge mode would be pushed until Season 3. In this same video, they also insinuate that typically across games, we see seasons that are 3 months long in length.
Anybody who's been reading our blogs or has been engaged in Master Chief Collection or frankly has been playing any other live game, they're probably pretty familiar with the way seasons work, but timing wise for us, a season is about 3 months. That's our goal, is to ship a season every 3 months. So when it comes to campaign co-op, our target is to ship co-op in Season 2 about 3 months after launch, and then our goal is to ship Forge in Season 3, which would be about 6 months after launch.
This heavily falls into that misdirection category because right away they compare Halo Infinite to other games and point out that other games have seasons that are 3 months in length. But that was never the intention with Halo Infinite, at least by the time launch came, and there was never any full clear clarification. When Halo Infinite launched, it was already set in stone that that season would be 6 months long. You could see it from the Battle Pass on day 1. Season 2 would also end up being 6 months long, and it ended up actually getting extended to 9 months in length. Halo Infinite releasing was still a really big deal, and it was really exciting for a lot of Halo fans. For the most part, Halo fans enjoyed their first impressions of Halo's multiplayer, and the campaign itself was more or less received positively. However, there were some things that started to get pointed out shortly after the novelty of having a new Halo game wore off, and players were faced with the reality of the state that Halo Infinite was in. Firstly, if you go back and watch the original Slipspace engine reveal trailer for Halo Infinite, a lot of the stuff that's in that trailer is not at all in the game. The biodiversity that's shown off, non-existent. Secondly, players were quick to start to notice some little nuanced things about Halo Infinite's mechanics. It seemed very similar to Halo 5's and other Halo games before that. Surely with all of the talk of a brand new engine being built from the ground up, what was going on here? As it would turn out, once again, never explicitly lying, but leading many fans to incorrectly believe that Halo Infinite's engine was built from the ground up and was part of the reason why the game took so long to be developed, was not actually the case. The Slipspace engine is just an enhanced version of the Halo 5 Guardians engine, which, if you know the history of Halo, is an enhancement of Halo 4's, Halo Reach's, Halo 3, Halo 2, and Halo 1's engine. Between every Halo game release, there's enhancements made to the engine, and Halo Infinite's engine is no different, but it wasn't a fresh new engine built for the future of Halo. If you go back and look at a lot of the buzzwords and exciting new features that the Slipspace engine was going to provide, you start to realize that maybe this thing was very much so overhyped.
For an engineer who was on 5, but not on, and then they came and saw this, it would be a pretty foreign system, set of systems. So
Gotcha.
We like to take the existing kind of stuff that we've built for Halo 5, and we like to bring it online inside of Slipspace and all the new technology that we've built, so that we can ensure that we're kind of building things and that we aren't just starting over from scratch, where it's like, I think the fear that a lot of people have at times is that it's not going to feel anything like a Halo game, and we definitely want to make sure that's not the case.
In various interviews back when the Slipspace engine was first being talked about, it was explicitly stated that the Slipspace engine would make the implementation of new content and fixes significantly faster and more streamlined than ever before. Yet one of the biggest criticisms Halo Infinite would see in the following year would be the slow drip feed of new content and the lack of ability to get fixes turned around in a basic time frame. Some players had went into the game files and have gotten things like debug tools working and development panels in the game that mirror the exact same layouts and formats that were used in Halo. So there were criticism from a lot of people pointing out that at the very least, 343 allowed fans to go on believing that this was a fresh engine built from the ground up, or at the very worst, some fans are feeling like they were lied to.
One, we want to do more with Halo, and two, we want to have a team that can do their best creative work within our engine. So it really was taking the time off, and as we announced the Slipspace engine last year, it is all to make sure that we're building the platform for the future of Halo. So it was a huge investment, a bigger investment than we've ever done.
Now there was a large group of fans that were willing to forgive this because at the core the gameplay still felt pretty good, but there were other issues that were lurking here as well. The fact that there was no XP just for completing games as a part of the base model for Halo Infinite was very negatively panned across the board. And while players expected something to be implemented soon, it would be months and months before this would be addressed, with the only real changes to how Battle Pass progression would function were to not cap you off on challenges as quickly as when the game first came out. Also, from the campaign side of things, without co-op, it already was a pretty big blow, but there was a few other things missing from the campaign right away, like level select, something that's been in every Halo game except Halo Infinite, which still hasn't been implemented into the game yet. Also, with Halo Infinite oddly launching without a standard Team Slayer playlist, this quickly rose to one of the top requests from many players, and the response from 343 was that there were UI limitations in place restricting the game from quickly getting new playlist updates, so it would be a while before Team Slayer would be added. On top of that, Big Team Battle would completely break, with no games being able to be match made right around the holiday season, and since all of 343 was on holiday vacation, this wouldn't actually end up getting fixed for 3+ weeks until after the new year, when Big Team Battle could finally be fixed. It was also during this time that fans started to realize a lot of discrepancies between how the ranking system was supposed to work and what actually would end up working when it came to things like MMR.
This company does things to fucking counter everything. So like if you're decent at the game, or like at least like okay at the game, it just fucks you. You're in a non-stop fucking void of getting fucked in the ass, bro. You just get fucked over and over if you're decent at the game. So the goal about Halo Infinite is to be average.
Also during this time, Jason Schreier released an investigative report article that he had written about the development of 343's Halo Infinite and some of the major production woes that the game was faced with over the years of development, citing that the Halo Combat Evolved era Faber tools, which are still a part of the development kit for the Blam engine, which is the Slipspace engine, caused a lot of technological debt, making development significantly harder, to the point where some employees at 343 Industries would occasionally joke about the engine being technologically bankrupt instead of just the regular tech debt. Also in this article, it was pointed out that large portions of the game would have to be cut out of the campaign when the game went into full crisis mode in 2019, and with the high turnover of contract employees, not being permanent employees at 343 Industries, became very difficult to manage different teams working on different projects and have cohesiveness between all of the projects. Microsoft has a policy of keeping their contract workers typically on a 15-month cycle, and apparently rarely rehires contractors, meaning that in a lot of cases there was a large number of contributions coming from a large number of sources simultaneously. Back on the multiplayer side of things, the store was being criticized for being overpriced, while earnable earnable rewards were being recycled on a somewhat normal basis instead of new rewards being brought in. This nameplate, for example, was the reward for weeks 14, 16, 19, and 22. Months and months into the game releasing, there still were no new maps yet, and when Season 2 finally would start, named Lone Wolves, 2 new maps would be added and a new game type known as Last Spartan Standing would be added. However, the new game type that was heavily promoted for this new season would later be sunsetted out of the game just a few months later on. Season 2 ended up being a lot messier than a step forward like many fans had hoped. Not only was co-op delayed yet again, but there was a major issue with weapons jamming because of a new preventative measure that 343 implemented to stop people from using cheating devices. During the early days of Halo Infinite's release, cheating ran rampant in the Halo Infinite community, with a lot of outcry from fans asking 343 to do something about the cheating issues, and what they came up with was this gun jamming thing that ended up affecting a lot of regular players who were not cheating. Also, a little bit of bonus controversy around this issue: when Halo Infinite released, the reticle color change was disabled for PC players as an attempt to circumvent players from being able to quickly code up some sort of cheating mechanism on the PC, though this did not seem to actually be helpful at all. Furthermore, during this seasonal update, a lot of the trick spots that were used in competitive play were removed from the game, which ended up getting a lot of backlash to the point that 343 ended up restoring these trick spots. And over on the campaign side of things, many of the tricks that speedrunners would use were removed and blocked out from the game. However, there was criticisms that a lot of the tricks seemed to be cherry-picked directly from speedrunners' routes rather than overall bug fixes to the campaign. So rather than fixing a bug that allows a wide variety of things to occur, it seemed like they just went along the speedrunning route trying to block off the speedrun tricks. This would also include the removal of the accidental tank gun, which was available after the second level of the game, though this tank gun would end up being restored. There was a lot of controversy around the fixes that came with Season 2, because it seemed like, in a weird way, while Halo Infinite was already bleeding a lot of players at this point, the two groups of players that still actively were playing Halo Infinite the most were the competitive multiplayer community, who would utilize those multiplayer trick jumps, and the speedrunning community that were finding new ways to beat the game in the fastest times possible. So it did seem like a really odd decision to target something that would stunt the game dynamic for those two communities that still were playing Halo Infinite for whatever reason, to make the game appear more polished. It was a very odd decision to make. Oh boy, do we go into the Halo TV show? Okay, we're gonna go into the Halo TV show. The whole history of the Halo TV show is very, very crazy when you look out there and you look at the longevity of them trying to get a TV show off the ground, starting from way back in the Bungie days all the way through the big Xbox One announcement, and it was pretty much in development hell for a long time. There's been plenty of showrunners leaving the project. The show was delayed, an episode was removed from the listing. It's probably one of the messiest development histories for a television show in recent history. We did a whole video even talking about how we were surprised the show even got off the ground. Nonetheless, when the show ended up releasing, there definitely was a lot of outcry coming from the Halo community. First of all, the show was originally supposed to be in the Halo universe canon, though later it was changed to be in its own timeline, separate from the main video game timeline, and this story definitely departs pretty heavily from the main story. I do stand by the fact I enjoyed watching the show, whether it was for the memes or just the interesting choices that they were making along the way, but nowhere is it a faithful adaptation of the franchise. Let's see, they introduce a character that doesn't really have any purpose. Master Chief is constantly taking his helmet off and acting quite strange for how this character should act, even though Pablo Schreiber's portrayal really isn't all that bad. Nudity seems forced. Master Chief has sex with a war criminal. Cortana just watches. This character puts gun grease in her hair to show that she's unique, but then ends up being the most interesting character in the entire series. And Halsey just goes straight criminal, not really the morally ambiguous type of character that she's known for being in the books and in the video game series. The show was a mess. Fans are really upset about it, and I can't wait for Season 2 still. There was a very interesting Washington Post article talking about the future of the Halo Halo series, and Frank O'Connor, the franchise creative director, said that he and his team have likely evaluated tens of thousands of proposals from a plethora of companies asking to work with the Halo IP. The potential partners range from promotional opportunities to novels to screenplays. When Frank O'Connor was asked how they decide what new ideas are okay as 343 tries to grow but also protect the Halo IP, Frank O'Connor's response was, "It's kind of like you know it when you see it." All right, now going back to Infinite. There was also the time where they added team snipers, and the loadouts most of the time weren't actually snipers or just snipers. There's a lot going on in this playlist. There was a really big issue in June 2022 where 343 Industries released a nameplate in celebration of Juneteenth, an annual holiday in the US to commemorate the emancipation of slaves in the country, and they named the cosmetic item Bonobo, which is an endangered type of ape. They did fix this very quickly and apologized, pointing out that the name referred to an internal toolset and was not intended to be used as the name for the nameplate. But yeah, there was definitely some big backlash when this happened. Now, we never really got into the big drama that's taken the Halo community by storm in recent years, which was whether or not Sprint belongs in Halo. You can just imagine how a debate like this on Twitter would go. But also there's this really strange sect of fans in Halo who are just in absolute denial that the player numbers have significantly dropped. Mind you, you could be the biggest Halo fan, 343 Industries defender, Halo Infinite player that just loves every aspect about the game and disagree with all criticism towards Halo Infinite. That's fair, that is an opinion, but I definitely feel like I lose brain cells when I see people making arguments against, at the very least, the fact that the player base has significantly dropped since Halo Infinite's release, as most games do see player drops after their release anyways. But for instance, in some cases, someone will come along like Arash and he'll tweet out the Steam charts number, which shows just a section of the overall player base, as it only shows players who have Halo Infinite on Steam, but you can see the drop-off rate from its peak popularity at launch to where it is now. And still, for whatever reason, this debate rages on sometimes, which does fall under a 343 drama, as to whether or not Halo Infinite has seen player population drops. There has been many pro players or other influencers who have shared their experiences having trouble finding games. Mint Blitz, who is located in Australia, has talked about his trouble finding a lot of games, and there's been other streamers as well, especially in the non-North American region, who really struggle to find games in Halo Infinite because of the lower population numbers, something that wasn't an issue earlier on when there were a lot more players. Also, another interesting thing that a lot of people have talked about since Halo Infinite's release is the very large number of employees at 343 Industries leaving since Infinite's launch. Now, it's not too unusual for some big industry veterans to move on to new projects after one project is fulfilled, but the high number of departures at 343 Industries does seem, at least to some people, a little bit concerning, followed by the fact that more recently, Bonnie Ross has stepped away from 343 Industries after her long tenure leading the company. There is definitely questions as to what the company's morale is looking like right about now, considering the situation that this company overall is in. Bonnie Ross most recently was heavily criticized for statements she said after Halo 5 Guardians release on how split screen would be a feature moving forward that would always be included in Halo titles.
And I would say for any FPS going out forward, we will always have split screen in going forward.
Though, in the most recent update to Halo Infinite, it was announced that split screen co-op campaign would no longer be developed, essentially it being canceled, though worded carefully enough to not fully cancel it. It's just being taken off the timetable for its release, and it doesn't look like it's ever coming.
We have had to make the difficult decision not to ship campaign split screen co-op and take the resources that we would use on that and go after this list and all these other things that we're going to talk about in just a sec.
This is definitely really upsetting, especially because in the following days after this was announced, some players were able to utilize glitches to enable split screen in co-op, and for the most part it worked surprisingly surprisingly well. So why they can't just patch up and clean up just the little distance this feature still needs is still a big question mark for the Halo community. But yeah, as of now, at least, unless they reverse their decision, it looks like we're not going to be getting split screen co-op at all. You guys may remember back in February, there was this little small minor controversy that came up on Twitter that definitely rubbed a lot of Halo fans the wrong way. But Team Respawn TV, a Halo channel with around 40,000 subscribers at the time, tweeted out to various Halo community managers pointing out that Halo 5 Guardians and Halo Wars 2 had their servers down for over 36 hours, and there was no mention of the outage or a timetable for when these games would be expected to go back live. They'd been posting about it for over a day at that point, trying to get the attention of anybody, and finally 343 Postums ended up responding to the tweet with this specific tweet here. "Hey my friend, I wasn't aware this was down as I was paying attention to Russia bombing a country of innocent people and going through the emotional response of being a father and thinking about my son growing up in a world of war. I will be following up now on this." Objectively speaking here, I don't think this was the most professional response to make to someone just pointing out that the servers had been down. It definitely felt like a very claws out response, but I get it. During February, there was a lot of intensity, but at this point, fans had already been growing frustrated with just the lack of communication from 343 Industries historically, and this definitely didn't feel like the smoothest response. I'm still unsure how I feel about this whole thing when it went down, but maybe you guys can let us know what this situation made you feel like. Later on, Postums would apologize for the way that the tweet came off, and later it was revealed that Postums was changing positions internally at 343 Industries, something that he had already apparently set in motion before all this stuff went down, allegedly. Also around this time, Marty O'Donnell started to become more and more vocal on social media about him not receiving proper credit from 343 Industries for his contributions in the music composition and vagueness in his royalty payouts for being the main core composer of the Halo theme that's still used across the entire franchise. This was something 343 would catch a little bit of criticism on, though eventually it was announced that they did reach a mutual agreement, which does sound best for both parties. And lastly, one of the final small criticisms, but something that a lot of fans at least accepted and knew would one day inevitably come, was the shutdown of the original Halo Xbox 360 servers, where Halo 3, Halo Reach, and Halo 4's online matchmaking would be shut down. Fans had known eventually this day would come, so it wasn't as much of a big controversy, but still something 343 caught a little bit of heat on because there's other Xbox 360 games that are still having their servers online, and it just seemed like a weird decision to shut these ones down, though you can still play online in a peer-to-peer setting or custom game type setting, and that still works. It's just the matchmaking features that are shut down. There definitely was a lot of controversies over the years, and these are just some of the biggest ones. We definitely missed a few of the smaller ones, so if there's any that you remember that kind of rubbed you the wrong way, maybe share it in the comments down below. We tried to go through these as quickly as possible, and here we are, but thank you for watching this much of the video. Also, huge thank you to our patrons. If you guys want to help us make more content like this, like longer form content, it's only possible because of our help on Patreon. So if you want to join the discussion and help us out in making this type of content possible, literally the guys out there who are on the front lines throwing a few bucks our way have made all the difference. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe and notifications on. That's it for today. We'll see you all next time with a brand new video.